Thank you for joining us today. We are excited for you to hear from our panelists and to learn about the challenges they face daily with internet access. Today's session will be a bilingual event. They say that the best internet is the one you don't notice, the connection that is so stable that you rely on it being ever present. But what do you do when the area you live in doesn't offer internet, much less fast, reliable, and affordable service? How does that affect your work, your education, your connection to telemedicine, or to the world outside of your zip code? There are still 3 million students in the United States without a broadband internet connection. Today, we will hear from lived experts about their experience with the digital divide. We are here in South Texas, Far, Texas to be exact. And while this municipality is working to bridge a digital divide with services such as teenfar.net, there is still a lot of work to be done to provide fast, reliable, affordable internet to this area's communities, in particular, the Colonias. Before we get started, we'd like to share a short video. This video was created by the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas. The video will briefly describe what a colonia is for those who are unfamiliar with the area.
The greater border region of Texas, while both rural and urban, is known for its vast ranches with mesquite, cacti, and dirt roads. Though it is a land of oil, gas, and cattle, as well as a center for international trade and a growing service sector, it is not always a land of opportunity for residents, especially those living in Texas border colonias. Still, colonia residents are characterized by their resilience and determination.
There is an extraordinary spirit that looks forward. There's always a drive. People are always hustling, but in the best sense of that word.
In Spanish, colonia means a community or neighborhood. The Texas office of the Secretary of State defines a colonia as a residential area along the Texas-Mexico border that may lack basic living necessities, such as potable water, sewer systems, electricity, paved roads, or safe housing. A common misperception is that colonia residents have recently entered the U.S. from Mexico. Actually, residents are mostly U.S. citizens of Mexican descent. More than 40% live below the poverty line, and an additional 20% live at or near the poverty line. Families struggle to make ends meet.
And you say, well, why would a person live in that kind of condition? Why would they even consider moving into that kind of condition? It's the American dream.
Low educational attainment is one factor explaining why poverty is persistent in the colonias. Parents value education and want to help their children succeed, but are hindered by limited English proficiency and lack of experience in navigating the education system. Many local efforts are aimed at developing students' talents, preparing them for the workforce, and helping them become civically engaged. Behind some of the most noteworthy efforts are Project Arise, Llano Grande Center, South Texas College, IDEA Public Schools, and FAR San Juan Alamo Independent School District.
We look at the strengths that our students have and the potential they have. So we believe on building on the Spanish language and using it as an asset. The way we look at our work really is community transformation. If you only deal with the student, you will get great progress, but to move quicker and move deeper, the work with the parents is very, very important.
Institutions like FAR San Juan Alamo ISD serve as building blocks to community and economic development in colonia communities.
So next we'll start with introductions. Hello, my name is Michelle Martinez-Vega. I serve as the Chief Technology Strategist at IDRA, an independent nonprofit organization. Our mission is to achieve equal educational opportunity for every child through strong public schools that prepare all students to access and succeed in college. And I believe that digital equity is educational equity. Together with my colleagues, Aurelio Montemayor, Thomas Marshall III, and Cristina Quintanilla Munoz, we will host a panel of remarkable women who work to better their community and ensure that their students have every opportunity for academic success. Now, Christina and Thomas will share some informative information about the current situation in this area.
So as my colleague mentioned, internet is a critical source for students in accessing digital skills, but also the online information necessary for alleviating impact of barriers, especially affordability barriers that would otherwise be a huge burden on families who receive low incomes and bridging the homework gap. The digital divide disproportionately impacts students from families who receive low incomes, and especially students from households that lack a robust connection to infrastructure to support students' learning. So according to Pew Research study in 2021, despite the rise in rural adoption, rural residents are still less likely than those who are living in suburban areas to report having home broadband, just due to limited and outdated infrastructure, but also affordability. So in neighborhoods like the Colonias, not only is infrastructure lacking, but the affordability of substandard services is quite low. There are various challenges to measuring community access, from network deployment, network speeds, to adoption of broadband internet. But household broadband adoption can serve as a good indicator for a household access to internet because it encompasses various dimensions like access to broadband, infrastructure, knowledge of available services, and the affordability of such services. So while data such, that's presented in broadband need maps like that NTIA or FCC have available, decision makers must consider other critical information when assessing needs, such as affordability of services offered by ISPs, trends of digital discrimination, or the intentional underinvestment of low-income neighborhoods and neighborhoods of color that these maps reveal. Colonia residents' limited access to affordable and robust connection will contribute to overall their access to being a part of the digital economy. So we're humbled and grateful to introduce you our wonderful panel of thought leaders, change makers here in the RGB. Our first panelist, Lourdes Flores, began as a volunteer teaching English as a second language to Colonia residents at Arise. Arise focuses on education, leadership, and empowerment for the immigrant and Colonia community. Jerry Naughton, the founder of Arise, instilled in everyone that you can teach what you know. Lourdes carried the torch, and 30 years later, she is the director of Arise Adelante, working to improve conditions in the Colonias and the Rio Grande Valley. Lourdes is also a co-founder of one of the Arise centers in Colonia Muniz, and she is now part of new initiatives for parent leadership programs. Was a co-founder of the Comunitaria parent group, and she has also led education Mesa Comunitaria for 7 years.
All right, thank you everyone for joining us on the webinar in person. And next we have Emma Carranza. She began as a volunteer at Flores in 2004. She lives and serves the community of South Tower as a strong, dedicated leader. Eva has been actively engaged in different committees that provide opportunities for her leadership role as a citizen. She's gained a lot of issues on concerns like drainage, infrastructure, immigration, especially education, which she needs. Eva has spent many hours teaching and learning parents, teaching and learning from parents on the importance of being an engaged parent. Her passion for education has given her many opportunities to advocate for issues of language, Mexican American studies, environmental justice, and equitable infrastructure in the communities.
All right, and we also have the privilege of hosting Ms. Jordana Barton-García. She is the Senior Fellow with Connect Humanity. She is also Principal of the Social Enterprise Barton-García Advisor. She serves healthcare organizations, local governments, nonprofits, schools, universities, philanthropy, financial institutions, and internet service providers to strategically expand broadband infrastructure and digital inclusion in underserved rural and urban areas. Her work helps organizations and communities achieve full participation in the digital economy and promotes economic development, health equity, telehealth, workforce development, educational equity, access to financial services, and entrepreneurship. Her publications have contributed to the field of community development and digital inclusion. Jordana grew up in rural South Texas, border community of Benitez, and she holds an MBA from Harvard University's John F. Kennedy School of Government. And last but not least, we have our student, someone that we're all here for. We have Gabriella Benitez. And would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Gabriella Benitez. I'm 21. I am currently still trying to get through college. So I'm still a student trying to get through the pandemic.
Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. If you have more things to say, please.
Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school?
I grew up in Mission. After Mission, I went to Palmview High School in La Jolla. And then I continued here in community college at SCCA Academy.
What do you want to major?
I'm majoring in teacher, being a teacher for children elementary.
Thank you so much for being here. And we'll go ahead and start with some questions.
Yes, so thank you so much, everyone, again. Aurelia is going to be translating for us today. But we just want to start the questions off. All of you come from different backgrounds and really want to understand what are some of the challenges you all face with internet connectivity.
So son los retos que ustedes enfrentan.
So I can begin as a nonprofit organization and as Arise, working with our community. We have, I can think back maybe about in year 2000 where some of my parents were very interested in learning more about technology. And who else to go to this group of youth that have this knowledge and have the experience and have the capacity to be able to help them. So we started a program like that called Techies and started organizing and helping these parents navigate the system. It was very good, right? It was something that they wanted to do and something that they desired to do. And the experience that we have recently learned gone through with technology, and now we were like immediately forced to learn and to teach our community and to teach the people. So it was like a great how do we say, like a survival thing for people, for the community to be able to learn and to adapt. Many changes, many challenges, many different experiences that our families went through in navigating the system, navigating technology, but not having the resources, not having internet, not having technology, not having a good connection. Colonias families were for the families that were serving in Colonias, it was a huge challenge. So it became, like many years ago, it became something wanting to do to something that you had to in order for you to be able to survive. So that was a great need in our communities, in our families, for our children's education, for survival, for any time of families that needed to see a doctor, to apply for services, to many things that at one point you didn't have to worry about, and going into a computer or having access to internet, it became a really, really huge challenge.
¿Cuáles han sido los retos en el mundo virtual para la comunidad, para ustedes?
Nosotros como padres de familia, el reto pues es el costo, para empezar, el costo del internet, también el acceso a internet, ya que hay muchas comunidades, muchas colonias donde no hay conectividad, todavía no entran las compañías de internet.
So two things, one is the cost of the internet, and the other one the access. There's many colonias where there is no access, right?
También el dispositivos, que no tenían suficientes dispositivos para computadoras, para trabajar, para que los niños tuvieran sus clases.
They just didn't have the tools they needed, the laptops, whatever it is.
Y también la falta de conocimiento del manejo de la tecnología como padres, ese también fue un gran problema, ya que a veces puedes tener la computadora y puedes tener el internet, pero no sabías cómo desde prenderla muchas veces, dónde estaba el micrófono, dónde estaba la cámara. Entonces,
so even having the laptop or the tablet, you didn't know how to turn it on, you didn't know how to use it, where the camera was. It was a whole new thing that you had never had in front of you in your home before.
Entonces, si nosotros teníamos lo básico que era como aprender una computadora, pues menos manejar un programa.
If you couldn't even turn it on, how could you know how to manage a program and interact with the instrumentation?
Fueron una de las principales desafíos.
Those are the big challenges.
For me, one of the challenges was, well, I had never owned a laptop before, so I got my first laptop when I started college, and I started spring 2020, so I started right before the pandemic. It was very hard for me to learn over Zoom. I've never used Zoom, I had never heard of Zoom. It was very new to me. It was very hard. I'm more of a in-person, I have to like to learn. So it was very hard for me to learn and to continue with my classes. For having all my family was there, my parents were home, works were shutting down. It was very hard to get the privacy you needed to be able to get to class, and just taking care of the kids, helping my siblings and so.
Yo había tenido computadora, no tenía privacidad en casa, todo era nuevo para ellos.
And Jordana, I know you come to this a little bit different, but I want to really unpack, figure out, why this is such an issue, and kind of talk about a bit of the history of Colonias and why this, internet service providers really haven't dedicated time and effort to each person.
Yeah, so actually it was Lourdes and Eva and others that I was able to meet with when I was writing the Texas Border Colonias study for the Federal Reserve, when I was at the Federal Reserve, and it was part of it was quantitative, but also qualitative, right? So in all those interviews and focus groups, I kept hearing, and this was back in 2013, 14, when I was traveling around the border, doing the study, and so I learned from a lot of mothers, right, about the homework gap before I knew it was called the homework gap, right? About the difficulty of their children to do the homework because they didn't have access at home.
This is before pandemic.
Yes, that's right. It's quite a while ago, and so I knew it was important, right? It kept coming up, and also mothers explaining to me that they couldn't take classes at South Texas College workforce development programs to be able to become a nurse, or different goals that they had. They couldn't because a lot of it was offered online and they didn't have online access. So it became very real for me, even though I wasn't asking that question. I was asking about the basic infrastructure. But I do grounded research, and so I had to hear what people were actually saying. And what I realized, right, when we came together as a community afterwards, right, to report on the findings of the report, and the community was going to decide what did they want to work on, like their top priorities. They wanted to work on closing the digital divide, and so that led to a lot of work, because I had to learn side by side with them, how do we really solve it? It was clearly a structural, systemic issue, and I knew that some band-aid approaches that people had tried weren't working. I wanted to really understand the policy issue. So we changed the Community Reinvestment Act, which was about addressing redlining, right, in low-income and underserved communities and people of color, communities, neighborhoods with people of color, which either does a great job in explaining that. I won't go into that, but I realized that this was another kind of redlining, right, that these communities all along the border, including the Colonias for sure, right, because they are both peri-urban, so they form around cities, and sometimes cities like in Brownsville, kind of grew around a colonia, a large colonia, but never incorporated it, right? And then some are rural and deep rural, right? Yeah. So certainly, that was coming up for the Colonias. So
they were answering the questions that they wish you could ask, right? You were asking about one thing, and then
yes.
telling you the big.
Yes, and that's it. I learned from my colleagues here about how to do research and how to hear even when you're not expecting. And it was so important. And I was able to share their stories, and they were able to share their stories with the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve, we included broadband back then, and the Federal Reserve and the other agencies that regulate banks under the CRA, it's called, very important piece of civil rights legislation. We were able to change it and include broadband and say that it was essential infrastructure like water and electricity, right? And then included other details, right, to help banks around digital inclusion, right, of small businesses and communities and households, promoting, digital skills, right, because you want to at least focus on the three legs of the stool, right, the infrastructure, the affordability piece of devices and getting subscription, but also digital skills, and so how critical it is for workforce in general, right? As we know, the changing nature of the workforce, most even middle skills jobs are require digital skills. So it was clear that it was important and it should be a part of CRA, and it is. And now kind of we're working together in the field of community development along with the digital inclusion and educational fields and so forth to do the work that needs to be done.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I think you brought up a great point about the three-legged school, but the access and affordability, the infrastructure, and digital skills.
Y es tan importante facilitar el equipo, el acceso y el saber cómo.
So I'm interested in hearing from everyone about, when the pandemic hit, thinking about how, hotspots were passed out, but maybe you had devices, but what were still some of the challenges of navigating them or trying to do Zoom with, 4 people?
Cuando pegó el virus, sí empezaron a dar computadoras en las casas, hubo hotspots, pero todavía con eso que proveyeron las escuelas, ¿qué faltaba o qué eran los problemas?
Yo diría que uno de los problemas fue la infraestructura. Infrastructure in terms of we had a hotspot at home, but then that area where I lived or the area in my colonia was a dead spot because it was not receiving the signal. So then when even here at this center where Rice is, we had a good signal, but then across the street, in like 2 or 3 blocks down the street, we have another Rice building. And the signal there is really bad. So, at times we've had to change places so people can come here and then participate in a Zoom session or a meeting. So that would be one of the things that it could be a street that divides us, and then already the signal is really, really bad.
Because you and Eva were a few weeks ago in a session. She had to come to be with you because in person it was very bad connectivity. It was a national Zoom session. And she had to come sit with me in this building. It's just 4 blocks away.
Right. So it's very was very difficult. Many families as well. We heard many stories of a whole neighborhood across the street. This community or this area has the capacity or has the service of a certain company, but then a colonia across the street, people could not access it. Even if they were to call the company and have access and call it in and pay, the price, the company would not be able to go in because the infrastructure was not there, so they could not provide the service. So these are some of the issues that once we had. Again, even though school did try to provide, the laptop or the computer or a hotspot, the access to it was not the infrastructure. And then, many other stories that we heard about, as we're mentioning, and Eva mentioned also, the not being able to connect, or the equipment not being compatible, not being able to connect to it, or not knowing how to, or if it came down, then the mother could not help them how to put it back or connect it back on.
Pero aquel los retos que vieron.
Pues uno era, yo tenía ya 3, 4 niños en casa con diferente grado. Tenía su computadora, al conectarse 4, y si yo también trabajaba y tenía que trabajar en mi computadora, se bajaba el internet.
So you had 4 kids in the house, and mom was working, needed it, and so the kids were in different grades, and they had maybe just 2 instruments, and they were in the kitchen table, la cocina.
Sí, aparte el espacio en la casa, que
Sí,
son casas pequeñas a veces y no tenían privacidad. Ajá. y se bajaba la velocidad del internet,
The speed would go down.
y a veces el papá tiene que decidir, pues tú salte y no entres a clases para que el otro avance.
The parent had to decide, okay, you can connect because you're a junior, you need this, yes, you get up, you're not old.
For me, it was more, we were one laptop in my house, one laptop. So when I wasn't in school, my little sister was using it to connect to her classes, and then she'd do her homework while I went to work. And then when I come back, I'd work on my homework, and then I hand it off to my little brother so he could do his work and his classes. So we were all just sharing one laptop. Our internet connection was very slow. The reason that they would still connect with their phones. My cousins will come also to connect because they didn't have Wi-Fi.
You had a better connection than the cousin.
Yes, we had a better connection. We had to call to get a stronger signal. We had to call to buy phone boosters to boost our cell phone connection in our house just so we can be able to use it. Our Wi-Fi bill went up like $100 maybe, just so we can be able to do our classes and do the work from home and all of that.
What did you observe, John, for that in terms of the pandemic effect? Because for the first time, these homes had a computer or a laptop. In many homes, it was the first time. But what did you notice that was still the first time?
I think what Lourdes first pointed out, that schools were giving out hotspots, but then kids were going back home to places that they didn't work, right? And it's the highest cost of service, right? The hotspots, but so it wouldn't be sustainable to do that, right? So and then you have these major dead zones, certainly in the Colonias and other other places in towns like Far and McAllen and so forth. So so definitely noticed that. I think as a person who has been working since the Colonial Study has been working on this issue, I noticed that more people understood this problem. It was more brought out into the open, right? And nobody could deny how critical it was, and that what we were saying back then, we have to challenge the underlying assumption by which policy has been made, which has been that it's a luxury, right? That if you can afford it, you can get it. That no, indeed, it was a necessity, right? So we did that back then, but now you had it on the news and people could see it. So I was no longer trying to explain what people were experiencing, right? This invisible thing that people suffer, going to a restaurant to try to get Wi-Fi so their kid could do their homework or go back to the school parking lot. Those are silent, if nobody's covering it in the news, right? But now it was out in the open. People were revealing, a lot of journalists were revealing what was going on. So now I was being asked for solutions. So that was great. It was if there is, as people say, a silver lining in this just terrible pandemic and experience that we've had, it's that it brought out into the open struggles, challenges, and inequities in many things, and broadband is one of those intersecting issues that if you couldn't see your doctor, you couldn't go to school.
I just remind you, Lourdes is back here. She gave an example outside of education with her husband at the hospital. Do you remember? About the expansion of this everywhere.
Yeah, so one of the situations was that this family needed to go to the doctor, and she took her husband, and so the receptionist gave her a tablet to fill out the intake form or to fill out the information. And so, when she got it, she's like, where's the paper? And she says, no, from now on, we're gonna do it at this, so you have to learn to do it. And then the person was like, well, can you help me? He says, well, I'll help you this time, but this is gonna be the norm now. You're gonna have to use this tablet and register and fill out the form. And another experience is that also during this time, our communities there has been some services, there has been some opportunities of financial support for families, apply for this benefit, apply for this, but everything has been on the computer. And not only on the computer, in terms of filling out your name and your address, you know, you have a form, you do that, and you fill out your name and your address. But then when it comes time to upload this document or sign this document, and like, how do I? So it went to something that was easy to fill out in paper to something more complex in the computer and in the system, in the program, as well as for the kids, you know, for children. They were applying and they were learning on Zoom or whatever platform it was. But then the school has a different platform that they use. So it's a different system. So how do I, as a parent, not knowing much about computer, how do I help my elementary kid to be able to be successful in the classroom?
So the school showed the digital divide in huge ways, but it's in all aspects of society.
Yeah, health, I mean, you know, the focus on the Colonias, for example, came because it was a big public health issue, right? When people don't have access to safe drinking water and safe housing and so forth, right? Well, we saw with the pandemic that it leads to many more deaths for people of color because they don't have access, right? They can't socially distance, they can't see their doctor. My brother's a doctor in Central Appalachian region, and he said that just the devastating effect of people who didn't see the doctor all that time and now what they're going through. So
it's a class thing. Poor people in the village or something.
Yes, the same thing. And telehealth, right? We know now it's part of more people's lives, and they get to see the efficiency of it, the effectiveness, what it's good for, and what it's maybe not. You know, it's a tool that we must have, right? So, for example, the Ford Foundation we're gonna start a fund to make sure that community health centers, federally qualified community health centers, can get fiber extensions to their premises so that they can do as well as obviously why we're here today about the communities coming together and getting connected.
So I wanted to ask you, Gabriella, a question in regards to the homework. I wanted to hear a little bit more about, you said everybody came to your house, right, to use the internet. You all had to spend more money in order to boost your signal. But what was the experience like? I mean, even after the pandemic, how much homework has to be done online? Like, is it something that you need on a regular basis? What's the challenges that you face with that?
So homework wise, I was in college, so I had mostly essays. So it took me, I was doing research papers, 7 to 12 pages research papers, and it would take me a while. And then I had my little brother in high school that were also asking him for research papers. So we were just switching back and forth. My little sister, she was a incoming freshman in high school. So she was her first year, she missed it all. She didn't get, it was all through in the homework, just the package. She was receiving packets, and then they would send them to my email, to my parents' email. We would be printing them out. We would be handing out.
Did you have a printer at home?
Yes, we did have a printer. It wasn't the best printer. It did break a lot. We still have it to the
day. The ink is expensive.
Yeah, the ink is very expensive. Our bill, like I said, it did go up a lot. I'm actually the one who pays our Wi-Fi bill. We pay about $150. And to this day, it just already with the speed that we got, it's still very slow. My little sister still struggles to do her homework, and my little brother still struggles to do work that he needs to do.
Is it true that even though kids are back in the classroom now, homework is pretty much online?
Everything's online.
Even though they're in classroom, everything is online.
Yeah, she has her notebooks and everything, but I've noticed all her notes are on the laptop. All her homework, it's all on her Google Docs, on her Google Meet, Google Classroom, everything's online.
You submit your homework and that's online.
Yes, you submit everything through online. So, and it was a lot harder to be submitting things through online, especially that I was a fresh student. I didn't know the system yet. I was still learning how to navigate the system. So it was very hard for me to turn in my work on time and just work through it all. I was working from home. I was working retail, and then because of the Wi-Fi, I had to stop working from home so that my siblings could get a better signal.
Eva, para las colonias que donde tú trabajas, ¿cuántas casas tienen impresora en la casa?
El 99.9% creo que no tienen impresora.
It's a printer is a very rare thing to have.
So having said that, and knowing that so many of your cousins and neighbors had to come to your house for internet connection, what, like in the neighborhood, what does the landscape look like? Is it from one house to the next, there is a connection on one side of the street to the other side of the street?
So it just depends, I guess, on the house, because when I go to my grandma's house, I don't get Schneider, and she's on the opposite side of the street, just a couple houses down. But if I go to the house next door, I get a full connection. My house, yes, in my house, the only place you get connection was the restaurant. You wouldn't get connection at all. So that was the reason we had to get a signal booster to get the whole house connection. Even with that, we still struggle with getting our connection. And we still struggle with the Wi-Fi still goes out. And
So even though the school districts passed out hotspots and passed out laptops, it seems like there was still a lot of challenge.
yes, there was, they did get their hotspot, but there was no signal for the hotspot to receive. We wouldn't get signal, so they just couldn't use it.
So, Lourdes, you had a story earlier, we were talking about a young man that you had seen in a parking lot, basically trying to do his homework. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, so one of our centers is in Parkville, which is a very rural area, very isolated area. And so we visited we visited this particular center in Parkville. I noticed when I got there, there was a kid that was outside the school. It's already was in the afternoon, so the school was closed. And I noticed somebody was outside the area, the curb. Yeah, that's what he was sitting on the curb, and he was there sitting, and I could see him doing something. I don't know whether he was reading or something, with his head down. And so I went inside the building, the Rice building, and it was very interesting to me. So I went out and I saw him again sitting there. After about 30 minutes or 40 minutes, I went out again and I saw him. And I asked the staff, I wonder what he's doing, what is he doing there? Or like, I started to worry again, right? But then as I was talking to staff, and as I was leaving, I noticed that what he was doing was working with his computer. He was accessing internet from the school. So he was trying to get, so he was connected. That's what he was doing his homework or doing, work. And so it was very touchy for me to see these kids. They see that obviously he didn't have internet at home. And so we had to go out there, be, very uncomfortable. And just try to get as much as the daylight, the luz del día, to be able to work on his computer and also to be able to get that internet. So, when I was sharing the staff, and they were like, yeah, some come out here and they do that. So the school was closed, so we had to sit outside. Oh, sorry, go ahead. No.
Cuando no hay conexión en la casa, ¿a dónde iban las familias de los niños para hacer su tarea? ¿Qué hacían en tu colonia?
Aquí en mi área, los niños iban a Rice. Las mamás,
Come to the Rice.
sí, al centro. Y las mamás empezaron a compartir que los niños tenían la tarea porque en algunas áreas pusieron torres para internet. Pero el internet no funcionaba de lunes a viernes. A veces, porque sábado y domingo no, como no había escuela, no había internet.
Ours only worked on Monday, Friday, weekends.
Interesting. I wonder which project that was.
Sí, y en algunas veces la mamá llevaba al niño, o el niño caminaba al centro y desde la cerca, pues sábado y domingo no estábamos cerrados, pegados a la cerca porque daba el wifi y haciendo tarea.
Outside of the center because it was locked. I IDRA center, the Rice Center, but also in la biblioteca. They would go to the library. About 8 miles, they would get to the library, and then they would have to wait. They would have 20 minutes on the computer. There would be at the library before it closed, 10 students waiting for their 20 minutes on the computer.
So
in order for them to go to the library, they would have to wait for the parents to come
Yes.
home, or the father that has the car to be able to take them. So, you know, there's, you go to the city and Wi-Fi and, you know, McDonald's and, you know, in different restaurants, you can go there, but like people that are in the colonias who don't have any nice little, restaurant or a place, a fast food place where you can go in and connect to the Wi-Fi. So, in a right center in the colonias that where we were located was, you know, I tell you, it was a blessing for those families. They were able to connect, and they already had the access to it because they did it, you know, sometime during the day, but and then it would be easier for them to have the access when we were not available.
So, I guess the next question that I'd like to ask is about like coverage maps, right? So I believe that when we look at the coverage maps, if one house on a block has internet, right, on the block, one side or the other, it doesn't matter. If one house has internet, then it looks as though that area is completely covered.
But see that in Spanish coverage.
But
But
but like what you're saying, Gabriella, is that you're down there looking across the street, there's no access, you know, so even though that block seems to be covered, there isn't coverage. So Jordana, can you speak a little bit for us about that?
Yeah, I mean, those are the, you know, the FCC maps that are, pretty much everybody knows that they don't reflect anything about the digital divide because of the issue that you are, you know, discussed, right? That and the only way to know, right, is who has a subscription in their home and what speed are they getting? Are they getting dial-up speed and do they have a subscription? With the American Community Survey data, which is what I had to use with the Federal Reserve because of that issue, right, with the Form 477 data, I looked at subscriptions because I want to know who actually has the internet. and now communities are coming together and doing speed tests to really see because of the way the internet is deployed, a lot of with cable and others, you know, if a neighborhood, you know, it comes to the neighborhood, but then it depends how many people are using it, what you actually get compared to what's advertised. So with those issues, we have to look at who has a subscription, and then surveys also tell us, you know, what are they actually experiencing. So that's a very important point because we're relying so much on this, you know, mapping, but it better tell us about the digital divide, and that is, you know, you can only tell with subscriptions. It can't be about access because we have an affordability problem and we have this issue, right, that they might say there's access, but there's really not access, right? So it's the best data that we have, and it's awesome. And we're getting together with communities and doing surveys. We can hear directly from communities, you know, and so that's what, you know, what we're being called to do for the Infrastructure and Jobs Act funds, right, that need to come to certainly persistent poverty regions, which this whole region, right, many of the counties have been below the poverty line, 20% or more below the poverty line for 3 decades, right? Certainly Hidalgo County and the Colonias are even, you know, higher poverty, right? At or near poverty in the Colonias back in the 2050s. So it was like over 60%, about 61%.
don't have sewage. They flood easily from the there's rain, things like that. But also, you mentioned something really interesting. Que unas torres se llenaba, era demasiada gente y they would crash or something like that. Había demasiado uso y no tenía bastante.
Sí, sí eran los autobuses de los distritos.
The service is there, but too many use it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's not robust service, what we need right now. And I'm sure when we get to the solutions part, we can talk about what do we do about it.
Well, that's an awesome segue. Thank you for that. Because that's what I want to ask everyone. You know, in regards to solutions, what would high-speed, fast, affordable internet do for your community, right? And how would that help change this area? So we'll start with Lourdes.
Well, I think it would definitely benefit a lot of the families, students, parents, you know, people that have found also other ways or other opportunities of work from home. that need the internet or the connectivity. I think also that we also need to be able to look into the colonias and the need. It cannot be cookie cutter, that's gonna work. That's gonna work for everybody. It's very, very different. Like we said earlier, the school did send the hotspots, but they sent it to, a very isolated area home where that was not gonna function. It's not, anything will work. So then the same thing here, it needs to be a plan or a structure that is gonna be specifically for that area, for that colonia. We need to be able to consider those places that are already there, such as community centers or prisons, or like here next door to us, there's another building. So there needs to be a study, I think, in different areas, in the different colonias, to be able to say what will work here, and the best thing would be to bring people to the table. That's one of the things that Arise very much advocates for. Community residents for the colonias need to be present to be able to brainstorm or provide ideas, opportunities, or ideas as to what would work best for their colonia. Bring people to the table. Go ahead.
Bueno, pues uno sería mejor internet, mejor acceso, sí, rápido, pero también serían los dispositivos, que sean dispositivos, computadoras, buenas, que sirvan, que funcionen, y el costo, que sean accesibles, y que haya más equidad entre los institutos escolares, porque sí se vio mucha disparidad. Algunas escuelas entregaban tablets de Apple, y otras escuelas solamente le entregaban a unos cuantos porque no tenían y tenían que tener el trabajo en papel.
There's great disparity in the school districts. Some provided an Apple product to each child, others that were just shared, that were just lent, all that. Was district, the public funding of public schools is very unequal.
Well, I'm gonna actually ask you a different question. What level of service would be the most helpful to you? So, and that's kind of a weird question.
Like I guess, what would it look like to have like fast?
Yeah, like if you had fast, reliable internet, how would that change your life?
That wouldn't cost you $150.
It would cost $150, yes, a month. It would help a lot, saving the money. It would, I know right now, it would help a lot my little sister. With turning her homework, we still pay the $150. We still struggle with her internet. We still struggle with the connection. It's still, sometimes I have to do work online to prepare for things for the day after. And it takes me a lot longer when I should be sleeping in my rest. I have to be up early. I'll be up at 3, 4 a.m. trying to still get things done because of it.
Do you know the speed that you have with your house? Like, do you know what service you're being provided or what you're paying for?
Honestly, that's what we did. We tried to improve our Wi-Fi for the reason that I was working from home, so I didn't need a stronger Wi-Fi. That's when our bill went up. It went out for about $100. It was because I was receiving, so they were giving me the equipment that I needed. All I needed to do was provide the Wi-Fi. I still couldn't provide the Wi-Fi even after we called many times. They sped it up for us many times. They changed their plans, and they were like, "Okay, this is what you're going to be paying." But at the end of it, it came up to about $175. It's about how much I pay.
So there's a general formula. There's avoid that. And how do we set it up for the colonias that they have the appropriate access to the speed and width and everything else without raising the cost of some.
Yeah, and that's what we have before us, right? And IDRA and Connect Humanity and Arise are going to be coming together in the next couple of weeks on this issue. And BTX1, our colleague is here, a local internet service provider, and City of FAR that has built out a fiber to the home infrastructure. And guess what? They started in Las Milpas, because the mayor, Ambrosio Hernandez, he was, one mayor who said incorporated Las Milpas, a colonia. It wasn't incorporated. He incorporated it. Not only that, he made them a priority in the fiber to the home internet. So, and so when you build a network like that, right? They when they did their engineering study, they had one done for San Juan and Alamo, and everywhere in between. Guess what? So when you have a network like that, it's cost effective, right, to cover other communities. BTX1, the work that they have done in the community to build, just because they've invested in people, basically. They've built a really robust fiber network that just needs to be expanded. They want to cover the colonias. They're poised to cover the colonias, and maybe some of the federal funds would come in to help BTX1, a local ISP that is investing locally in the community in all kinds of ways, and in fact is joining with us in something maybe we'll have a chance to talk about, but the digital inclusion piece of our work together, right? So the infrastructure will be about.
Maybe in Spanish for them guys, I just want to make sure.
Good question.
Los proveedores de servicio de Internet son compañías, ¿okay? Y hay unas compañías como BTX que ahora están poniendo lo que se necesita, y lo que está diciendo usted, para que las compañías tienen que verlo de una manera más amplia, porque ahora ya San Juan y Álava tienen esas conexiones, pero la mayoría de los colonias no tienen eso. Esa conexión amplia de fibra.
Yeah, by coming together, that's how you can do it. And we have, Brownsville likewise, and BTX Fiber that got the bid to do the last mile. They've invested and they designed their network to be as close to the colonias as possible. So you can see that it's just a smart use of, if we can attract federal funds here, which I hope that we can, right? We can leverage that and bring great value, because what we're going to do is if we get several million to do this, we'll be able to bring in philanthropy and community development financial institutions, right, to make up the gap, so that we can get people exactly what they need. It's not like a lot of times people, like I heard a congressional member tell the colonias, y'all you need to get internet, but don't expect fiber. Well, they can have fiber-based internet. Guess what? They have assets. It's about asset-based community development, right? How do we bring, like Lourdes said, to the table the people that need to be talking to each other, the BTX1, the City of FAR and FARnet, Team FARnet, and City of Brownsville. They've been working really hard and very boldly to make this possible and cost-effective and sustainable, and then support the way we're going to come together next week. And Rural List has supported this, bringing us together, IDRA and Arise and so forth, to build a digital skills workforce, experiential learning, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that, because we talk about the three legs of the stool, right? It's access, it's affordable, fast access is what we want, right? Devices, and then it's also the literacy piece, and then development. Yeah, so talk a little bit about that, like what your future plans are.
Yeah,
addressing workforce development.
So one of them is bringing together for the making sure everybody's connected, right? Because you can't go anywhere without that. Bringing the assets. Arise, you sent me an article about SmartCom, right? Providing high-speed fiber internet, to a very low-income community that was not served. So we could bring the right internet service providers, which are the ones that are going to be receiving funds under the IIJA, Infrastructure and Jobs Act, and all of the programs under it, right? And we're going to come together for every application. What NTIA and others are talking about is make sure that you have the digital inclusion piece, the three legs of the stool that we talked about, right? So we're going to have a digital workforce program, and the beauty of partnering with a VTX1 and the City of FAR is because the students are going to have hands-on experiences building and designing broadband networks with engineers, and guess what? Most of them Latino engineers, so mentors, right, to these students, running the help desk, right? Not only at the phone and just running the help, they're going to learn all that. They're going to get their IT certification, hopefully with Celtics College and others. But a VTX1 has come to the table because they want to do that, right? They want to provide paid internships and apprenticeships. And so if we can raise the funds to do that, we can do a demonstration, certainly in the Colonias in Hidalgo County, and expand, across the border to Cameron and so forth. So it's a golden opportunity, because when you partner the way, you made a good point, Michelle, that partnership is critical. And it's because in partnership, you increase the size of the pie. You're not dividing up a finite pie, there's these federal funds and you're going to get this and you're going to get this. No, you leverage what you get and you create something bigger, right? And you come together and bring everybody's talents and resources and expertise to the table. Then we can run a really robust digital skills program, paid internships for students and experiences. And they're going to be out in their community as the experts, right? Training, like the Techies program that you did. How can we take that to scale, right? So we're thinking of holistically, how do we do it? And we know it's going to be joining together.
Lourdes, we've been talking about technical resources. Yes, good stuff. What can a grassroots organization offer like yours? And why should you have some resources in this way?
Well, one of the things would be that our staff, being able to use the model of the animadora, in which we learn and then we teach our community, and providing the knowledge and passing it on to the community, so that they can also in turn learn and know how to or get the knowledge of this technical usage, and then be able to pass it on, because that is one of the things that we most, that we do, that we want to make sure that we just do this cadena, this chain of knowledge, and pass it on to our neighbors or the families and to the community. So I think that's one of the things that Arise is committed to, training the trainer to train the trainer, and then also making sure that it doesn't just stop there, that it continues sharing opportunities for our students.
Eva, ¿en qué son expertos ustedes? ¿Qué recursos necesitan para ayudar en esta campaña?
Primero aprender nosotros a manejar la tecnología. Expertos somos en que la comunidad siempre se acerca a nosotros, tiene la confianza para recurrir a nosotros, para cualquier duda que tienen, y sabe que nosotros vamos a buscar el modo de resolver sus dudas, pero sí necesitamos más entrenamiento técnico.
Training and technology.
So we're gonna it's time. We can talk to you guys all day about this, and so we're not gonna shut off the webinar though, because we want to find out if anybody has any questions. So anybody wants to stick around and ask questions, please do that. But if you have to drop off because it's time, we understand that as well. So does anybody have any questions from the group here or out in cyberspace? Yes.
To introduce yourself, sir.
Yes, good afternoon. Good evening. My name is Alex Bill. I'm from NCIA. I'm a digital equity advisor for this region. My question is, what is affordability like to do? What is that like affordable? What is affordability?
How do you say affordability?
Accessibility.
Accessibility, affordability.
Yes, it's an cost accessible. I think like, what would be a reasonable cost for internet?
Yes.
Free. What would be a reasonable
Eva understood that word.
So, and guess what? Let's not lose that thought.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
but yeah, I would like to know, like, what do you feel would be a reasonable cost for internet?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying three. I don't think that I want to put a dollar to it because it's something that it's so needed. It's something that it's you know, with this we mentioned for school, for your child to be able to do well in school, is for you to be able to have access to your doctor and be able to attend to your need. It's for you to be able to you know, order food if you cannot go out and you don't have a car, you can order it online and you know, the groceries. It is to be able to order somebody to come and pick you up and take you to your place of destination. It's a place that if you were creative and you have the skills and the ability to work now from home and you're able to do it, that's how you need it, you know. So it's like it's a need. You need water, you need electricity, but you also need this internet. So it needs to be something that it's not going to cost you from paying your. You don't want to have to sacrifice one utility for another, or paying some other things such as, you know, food for your children in order for you to have them the internet, the service. So you know, you get you go to a park. It's or you know, there's parks, and so then there's there to be able to have help, you know, walk around and all that. So here in our colonias, you know, you can think back with about what 8 years ago that this community park was built. Before we didn't have it, and like it is such a need for you to be able to walk in a place that is safe and exercise and do that, and it's free. So then internet is becoming something that is going to be able to strengthen or nature, your community, your family, to be able to survive in this world of technology.
You know,
And we have the FCC ACP program. So another, you know, VTX1, the City of FAR, City of Brownsville, VTX Fiber, they all are, you know, qualify under ACP, and the key is going to be how do we work together as a community to reach into it. And once we have the service, that we sign people up for ACP, it's a $30 subsidy. And so some of these entities are it's basically gonna be free once you get that subsidy. And so that is really great, you know, and if you maybe order, and that's basic service, which we think of as at least 100 symmetrical or 100 over 20, 30. Not the current standard, which doesn't really apply, is not real. Very much, and then if you need to order more, you might pay a little bit more, right? Internet. And so, you know, the US has the highest cost of internet. There's no reason for that. We have local companies that can provide high-speed internet. It's about coming together in asset-based community development and working together to make sure we have the infrastructure, they're able to serve, and then that we get people signed up for ACP and with the digital skills in the manner that we're talking about.
You know, affordability, I think, is a different conversation than what we say is this service should cost as much as the neighborhood public school. We offer public schools funded by taxation for all children. There should be access to the poorest or the richest neighborhood. And so thinking of how the colonias have been ignored for services, potable water, for example, for generations, this should be something that we invest in as a public service. Number one, for our own best interest, because the human capital from those is going to create the wealth of the future anyway.
Right. This is a foundation. You've already
to think about it in terms of how much I'm going to charge them is a public investment in the colonia so that they have what they need to become the future that we need.
That's right. Show the impact of investing in them now. The economy, we can do that. We can show the impact of what it means, right, to invest in them right now. It's going to be multifold, right? What you get out of that.
Once you remove the lens of the prejudice against recent immigrant or Mexican or rural or the class and ethnic, I think the lens of problem comes because of how they're seen as less than.
That's right. And most residents of Colonias are U.S. citizens, certainly of Mexican descent. Great participation in the labor force. In fact, Latinos, right, overtook in Texas. Latinos it's the biggest demographic now. These communities all along the border and the colonias in particular matter. to our productivity, to getting innovation, right? Some of the most innovative work in affordable housing in the country and possibly the world, because we featured them with Habitat 3, is happening in the Colonias, learning from Colonia residents, right? One of their innovations is that they build their own house over time, right?
Yes.
To fit their balance sheet, right? So that your as your income grows, you know, you can add on to your house and so forth, right? Well, Brownsville Community Development Corporation, right? Brownsville, you know, figured out how to learn from Colonia residents what they need, right? And build that. They can build a house for less than a FEMA trailer, you know, and it's a SMUD certified solid house. So expect, you know, it's all about asset-based community development. If you know that there's huge human capital there and that they're worthy of investment, you know that what all you're doing is creating an opportunity and some equity. They're going to do the work. They're going to transform.
Lourdes says the experts in the community is the community.
That's right.
Somebody in Austin or Washington that comes to tell them what their needs.
That's right.
Yeah.
And don't let anybody tell you that you can't understand broadband networks, or you can't understand this policy issue. Guess what? The women in the Colonias, you know, if you're going to try to do a drainage project, you better talk to them because they understand the engineering and, you know, of drainage and all of that. So don't underestimate and don't say, because you're talking about people with huge potential and huge capacity, right? And so, you know, they can't understand enough, right, to make good decisions and to make good
partnerships. It's in Spanish, but it's brilliant.
That's right.
We have two questions. Marco has a question.
Well, yo quería agregar nomás que lo de sugerir que sea gratis no es una idea loca. Si van para el norte, hay muchos donde se parquean para descansar. Ya hay internet gratis en esos lugares y ahí están todo el día solos porque la gente no para. En las ciudades grandes hay internet gratis en varias áreas. No estamos pidiendo lujos, no estamos pidiendo que sea de oro, estamos pidiendo nomás acceso. What I'm saying is that there's already places, if you go north, that are very rural. All the picnic areas, the rest areas have Wi-Fi access. You just gotta log in, and big cities already have internet, and it's not even that we're asking for like a gold connection. We just want connection.
Well, I agree. I think also, like, you know, when it's not a crazy idea, I think it's wonderful and it's good because it's happening here. You know, we hear parks in McAllen where there's free internet. So why can't Colonia have free internet also and have access? You need to figure out how it is and how it's happening that is possible there in McAllen that can happen also here in Colonia.
Yeah, and low-income school children, your internet is your books now. So everything is on the internet. That should come with their education. The subscription to the internet should come with their education.
Well, and also you've got Brownsville and Park, for example, that have been bragging rightfully so about what they've done about it. And there's some companies that, you know, that are just a little bit of clash, but even if that Rio Grande to Brownsville, every municipality did that, there's still so many colonias that are not doing it.
But the whole point is that you build those networks because then you can expand to the colonias, and that most of those communities, that is what they want to do. And then you have BTX1, who's covering a lot of South Texas and a lot of the Rio Grande Valley. They're poised, right? So you put it together, like Lourdes said, it's not a one size fits all, but it's have the right partners at the table, which is arises.
It's Hargill is 15, right? Hargill is 15 miles from Edinburgh, right? So they can say, yes, casi que Hargill, so if Edinburgh has it, they really have to stretch it, though. I guess it takes it to it. For the valley, you have to really go county wide.
Yeah. Well, BTX1, for example, they are a rural broadband provider, right? They know how, they have access to the rights of way. They want to, you know, what they're actually doing. I'm looking at what they're actually doing and providing high speed, you know, for low cost. They know how to do it. So how do we help them expand, right, into these areas?
Federal dollars.
That's right. We hope so.
We're going to take one last question, and I feel like you're going to answer this for us, Jordana. Do you know the difference between the internet service that's being provided to cities versus the internet service that's being provided to the remote?
So in general, in this country, since it's an unregulated industry, we haven't required that everybody be covered with a basic service, right? So, and we generally don't have very much competition, right? And generally the entities that have gotten the subsidies from the federal government, the taxpayer dollars, has been, the big national ISPs, right? But there's been no accountability for, have you covered people, right, broadly, right? So that's what we're dealing with, but we know the answer, right? We have assets in our own community that know how to do this and are providing higher speeds. They just, PC Magazine just released that, I think it was about municipal ISPs. They were providing higher speed, faster service at lower cost than the big providers, right? And so how do you make, when in a community, right, because they're labeled not a good, just like in redlining, right, not a good risk, or you can't maximize profits there, you have to look at your local assets. And the reason a co-op or a small ISP locally, right, is because they're not trying to maximize profits. They're trying to do, they live in the community. They're part of the community. They care about it. And you should look at their record. You can see it real clearly, as well as municipal ISPs, right? Their bottom line is just to break even, bring great services to people and close the digital divide. So you have a lot of options. And in the Valley, some of the most innovative work in the world is being done. And both of the communities like Brownsville and from the beginning, they've talked about, we want to cover all the Colonias. Of course, they are very courageous people and doing hard work, and it's not instant, but guess what? Now, if we can make the case for federal funding for infrastructure, they're going to do it. The VTX1s, the SmartComs, that's right, that's right. And we know how to do it. We have the technology to do it. And don't let anybody tell you you can't have fiber-based networks. Yes, that's what you want for speed and capacity, right?
Great. So last words, we are closing out. So for Eva, I want to ask, what, again, how would fast, reliable, affordable internet change your life?
¿Cómo cambiaría la vida tuya de tu comunidad si hubiera rapidez, todo lo mejor del
Pues la educación de nuestros hijos no sería de segunda mano, sería de primera calidad.
education of our kids would be second class.
That's a wonderful answer. And Gabriella, same question. So let's pretend the internet's free, right? And you had a really fast service, right? How would that change the way you live your daily life?
It make work much easier. Getting things to my classes, and make it so much easier getting the information I need. I know it make it easier to turn in my work, any homework, and make it easier to do meetings.
So it basically would make your life easier. All right, well, thank y'all so much for joining us. Thank you so much for your time. Again, y'all are all remarkable women, and we just appreciate everything that you shared with us today.
Gracias a todos.